The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are my own or those of my guests, and in no way represent the views of the company or companies that I or we work for. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they are told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. You're listening to Squawk Ident, an aviation podcast dedicated to the journey and the challenges surrounding the life and career of Aviator Tony, his co-hosts, and his guests. Together we will explore the many pathways to an aviation profession, the realities of what a professional aviator can expect in today's marketplace, and we share many stories along the way. I'm your host, Aviator Tony, an airline pilot currently flying for a legacy airline with close to 20 years on the flight line. This is episode 44 of Squawk Ident, recorded on the 7th of July, 2020, from the Aviator Sound Studios somewhere in Southern California. On this episode of Squawk Ident, I am joined by the Squawk Ident Crew. Together, we discuss the beginning stages of the return to crowded airports and the flights at near capacity, though that's 85% full due to the CCP virus limits. We also talk about how our flight schedules are evolving and how recent social events around the globe combined with the effects of the pandemic have affected our flying. We share a few stories of passengers behaving badly and much, much more. So whether you're driving into work, working from home, or taking a break from binge watching your favorite TV shows, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start off this episode by taking a moment to recognize all of the frontline professionals out there. In the midst of all this crisis that's going on and all of the unrest from the Black Lives Matters movement that's going on around the country, these frontline workers are really putting themselves on the line to keep us all safe, to keep us healthy, and to everyone here in North America and around the world that continues to brave the potential exposure to keep the rest of us healthy and safe. From all of us here at Squawk Ident Podcast, thank you for all that you do. And I also wanted to start off the show today by again saying thank you to Mr. Bart Meltzer for joining me on episode 43. His path to an aviation career has filled the last 40 years of his life with stories of tenacity and exploration. If you have not yet taken the time to listen to episode 43 of Squawk Ident, I highly encourage you to check it out right after this episode. Thanks again, Bart, for sharing your journey with us. Joining us today, he is a DFW-based 737 pilot for Legacy Airlines. He is a former international and professional racquetball champion, a member of the 9G Club, a former F-111 crew chief, an AMP and avionics tech, an RC aircraft commander, and a pickleball master. Joining us from his Flower Mound home in Texas, help me in welcoming back to the show, Rob D. Rob, how the heck are you?
Hey, Tony. What's going on, man? I'm doing pretty good. I think I'm going to add one more accolade to that. I'm going to work on my javelin catching skills.
Oh, my eye,
Many people do that, but yeah. I thought that'd be a good one to add to it, but no, man, I'm doing good. Good to be back.
You know, you got a little extra time now that they've delayed the Olympics. I think you could probably get in there, I'm sure.
Well,
absolutely.
I tell you, I think I could be a world-class javelin catcher. I've seen some guys do it on YouTube, and they look pretty good, but I think I can beat them.
But can you do it blindfolded?
Well, I once you master the craft, I think you can do it blindfolded backwards any way you want.
I would have to agree with you on that. Absolutely have to agree with you on that. Also joining us on the show today is another exceptional aviator. He is a professional CFI, II, MEI flight instructor, a former Embraer 145 airline pilot, a King Air instructor, and a corporate pilot as well. From his fortress of isolation from somewhere in San Diego, California, please help me in welcoming back to the show, Captain Roger. Captain,
What's up?
Oh, not much. How are you, Tony? It's good to be back. How have you been?
I've been great. Thank you for asking.
Good to hear.
A little tired. We were talking earlier, I'm on day 4 of 6 of 2-day back-to-backs, which means the 2-day trips that are just back-to-back with each other. I was finished today around 3:30 in the afternoon, and today's day 4, so it's been go with short overnights, and I got another 2-day back-to-back tomorrow. So I'm actually looking forward to taking a break from all this aviation stuff to sit here. And
this airline thing sounds like a lot of work.
Oh my God. And the airports are crowded. Now, I know we're not going to all the outstations and all the destinations that we normally go to, and we don't have as many flights as we normally had even this time last year. But the latest report today was that we're at 55% of the flights from 2019. 55% is huge, and that's a great sign for the industry, I think.
Yeah, especially compared to where it was just a couple months ago, where it was only 1 in 5 or 20% or something like that. I think it was.
Yeah, we're at 20 to 22%, and in July, I know United, I read that they're ramping up to 25%, and Delta was around 27%, and I don't know how accurate those figures are, and they're going to be for July, but the fact that at Legacy Airlines and some of the other sister companies that we have, that we're ramping it up that much is absolutely a good sign. So, yeah, absolutely happy to report that I'm tired.
That's great for everybody. That things are hopefully coming back a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Well, gentlemen, before we get started about talking about work contracts, work aviation, I just wanted to take a moment and say congratulations to one of our former guests on the show. We mentioned it back there on episode 39 when I had the privilege to interview Mr. Owen Cotto, and that was the episode entitled A Journey Filled with Giving Back. And a big congratulations to him, because as we discussed on that show, he was going to be featured in our sister company's in-flight magazine. And he is now on the June issue of American Way. And I won't read the whole thing to you, but I'll put a link in the show notes. And in the in the June issue of American Way, Owen Cotto, a Miami-based Airbus A320 first officer for Legacy Airlines, kicked off Pride Month by sharing his career path with the company, how he has given back to the community, and his pride in the company's support of inclusion and diversity. It's just a big thank you for Owen for sitting down with me for that interview, and we're just so very proud of him. So congratulations, Owen. Big time.
Good job, Owen. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Great job.
So this week, what has it been like? I know we've all kind of been up in the air and flying. And, Roger, let's start out with you. How have you been in the past few weeks?
Well, it was a pretty slow for a month there, from the beginning of May to the end of May. And then I was gone actually had a 5-day trip. 5-day trip being somewhat relative compared to what you guys might call a 5-day trip. But I was gone this past week. We left on a Sunday and flew out to Austin, Texas. And then we were actually just out there for 3 full days. So we were just sitting around for Monday through Wednesday. And then we flew back and actually had a couple stops on the way back, which was actually somewhat notable, just because, like you were just talking about, in terms of Legacy Airlines starting to put flights back into their schedule. All 3 of the airlines actually putting flights back. We actually made our first business stop since March, which I think is hopefully going to be indicative of working our way forwards. Because we would normally go out and do some personal flying, but it was almost always coupled with some business flying. We haven't done any of that for the past 3 months or so. But this was the first one. So I'm hoping that things will start picking back up, not just for us, but for everybody else, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's great, and it's great that you had a chance to get up there. Now you're current. Yay! I know we were worried about that, and
I know Rob has been very concerned about my currency. I'm happy to report that I am more than current now. I've got my I don't know if I think I've probably got 4 landings or so within the past 30 days now. So
Wow.
I know Rob's making faces at me. He's pretty impressed.
I am. That's incredible.
I
Because
even
every
hit the
time I
center
talk,
line.
every time I talk to you, I'm like, how does he get his landings in? I don't get it. That's
Yeah,
good.
that third one, I finally hit the center line. I found that white stripe for the first
So
time in a
was
while.
that third one on the same approach, or just kidding?
It was on the third bounce. Does that count?
If you leave the pavement and you retouch the pavement, yeah, I think it counts.
Right.
No, I'm kidding, folks.
Yeah. Or it was the third one after how many go rounds, right?
Well, it's just a landing. We didn't say anything about how many approaches that took.
Right.
I counted each one and I logged it for my instrument currency too.
Well, if
6
you have your eyes
approaches?
closed, yeah. Do you
Yeah,
count it
that
as night
counts.
too if you have your eyes closed
IFR.
when you're touching down?
I like that idea.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe we should try that.
Right.
Yeah, or just put your face mask over your eyes, and maybe you can count that as an IFR approach.
Yeah, your foggles. There you go.
There you go.
I'm gonna log it as actual too.
Yeah, there you go. You have the
Safety
other
pilot
pilot there
next
to be
door.
your safety
Yep.
pilot. Yep,
Safety pilot.
there it
Yep.
is.
And you got the oral warning unit telling too low, terrain, pull up.
Yeah.
You're good.
Don't worry, the airplane's looking out.
Right.
Well, that's great, Roger. Rob, what about you? Have you been up there? I know you took a couple flights in there between the last show.
Yeah, it was a
we were on.
couple.
Yeah.
I had a day trip the following Friday after our last podcast. I think I did a Fort Myers turn out of Dallas, and so that was a really easy, straightforward trip. There was really nothing out of the ordinary on that one, other than a little bit of weather over the Gulf initially. So we were routed over mainland, over
the Gulf?
crazy over the Gulf.
What's that called?
Hurricane season.
What's the name of that hurricane?
I don't even know.
Pepe, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's one churning out there. I haven't really been paying too close attention to it.
I keep getting notifications on my phone about this thing.
Oh,
so
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
there's a
Cristobal,
lot of.
and I actually think it made
Cristobal.
landfall just a few hours ago. Also,
Oh, where did it make landfall?
Was it New Orleans?
it was
or
East Louisiana.
Louisiana. Yeah.
Oh, geez, wow.
Yeah.
It's we'll probably talk a little more about it down later on in the show, but I have turned off the TV almost completely in the past few days because there's just so much going on.
Good
So
for you.
this weather stuff, usually I get that from the news and everything like that, and just with all the craziness going on, I've just shut it off. So there's a
Cristobal
lot of
has
energy.
made landfall. Yes.
Woo. Yeah, it looks like a pretty good rainmaker right there.
Yeah.
So we on that trip, they had a little bit of weather over the Gulf, and Tony, you may be familiar with it. Roger, you too, if you're headed down to that area, South Florida. The one fix that sticks out of my mind is Redfin. It's like Redfin,
The tuna.
real estate thing, yeah, or that too.
Yeah.
So that wasn't on our flight plan. So immediately I was like, why aren't we going over Redfin on this one? And when I finally looked at the big picture, we're routed all around Pensacola and everything, which prompted me to go, I should look at the weather over the Gulf. And sure enough, there was some stuff, but it was also moving inland towards our route.
Yeah.
So and we ended up leaving maybe about a half hour late for some reason. I can't remember what the reason was. It was really irrelevant. But as we got airborne and headed out, got checked down with Houston, we heard guys getting rerouted over the Gulf. And so I got the nod from the captain. He's like, yeah, that's what we want to do too. So ended up going over the Gulf, which basically made us cut our flying time probably in half by but not in half, but like half hour. And so we landed on time, turned around, came back, flew over the Gulf. So that was a nice, easy trip. 2 days later on Sunday, I had a really easy one leg to Chicago in the evening time. Walked right across the street, spent the night at the Chicago Hilton. And then the next day at about 8 o'clock in the morning, walked back over to the terminal, flew Chicago to Miami, and then I headed home from Miami to Dallas. So nice and easy trip. That was the last trip that I've done. That ended on the 1st. I've been on call ever since. So kind of mid ranks in the seniority list. So
Yeah.
haven't been called out for any trips, but it's been nice to sit at home and enjoy the time with the kids and the family. And
Good. And enjoy while you can.
absolutely.
And I've got to say, you text me a photo the other day, and I was pretty impressed. And I was like, "Are you serious? Are you really doing it?" And you sent me a photo of a boat, pontoon boat. And you're like, "Yeah, I'm just boat shopping." And I'm thinking, "Oh God,
I'm really rich."
This guy,
Well,
he sits at home.
I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you guys have been following it, but stock has taken off in the last couple of days. And if you guys didn't invest in March when it was rock bottom, you kind of missed out.
Yeah, the president today said something about Warren Buffett made a big mistake by selling all of his American airline stocks, because the American airlines out there in the U.S., they are gonna just explode, because this is I've saved them, and it is what, $13 something an hour for or $13 something a share for Legacy Airlines right now, and growing. So that has a lot to do with the Chinese airlines that are now going to be banned, which we might talk about a little bit later in the show here coming up. There's some interesting news coming up, and I'm glad you got to get out there and you
so maybe airlines will buy me a boat.
I remember when you said, "Hey, I'm gonna buy a bunch of this airline stock now that it's like below $10," and
I got it at $8.30 a share, and I sold it at 22.
For all you guys listening out there, these two wackos, don't take stock buying advice from these two guys, okay? Please do not listen to them when it comes to buying or selling any stocks.
Yeah, I got to tell you.
Oh my goodness.
I am as green as the next guy on stock stuff, but I had a feeling that there was no way that stock was going to go any lower than $8.
I didn't touch it because I was like, I don't even know if they're going to claim bankruptcy again.
People have said that before, and they've been wrong too.
Yeah, I'm sure they have, and I didn't invest a ton of money, but I was like, this is too good of an opportunity. I could, I kept my fingers crossed, obviously, and believe me, between March and now, it was, I'm like, I need to take a Xanax because this is not good.
The risk reward was definitely in your favor, but please, nobody take advice from the stock market from any of us.
Thank you, Roger, for saying that, because oh my God,
I just want to keep us all out of some trouble here.
Yeah, because
I don't want people calling up and leaving reviews about how they lost their life savings because of us.
Down the toilet. Well, mine's gonna be in a boat, so which is essentially the same thing.
Yeah. I hope you have good.
I mean, if we're really talking about it, I may have, if that cruise industry could come back, I may have dabbled in some of the some unnamed cruise lines. So maybe if those can come back too, maybe these cruise lines can buy me a boat.
Yeah, I think you're sitting on a gold mine if you did.
Wow. So what are these stocks that you guys are talking about? What is it? Stocks? I just go to work. I don't know.
Hey man, remember the grass is only greener where you water it, so you got to invest in your own company.
Yeah, that's very true, and that is very true. And I did do some juggling in my retirement plan and tried to diversify my portfolio. Now was a good time to do that, not to sell, but to buy and spread out that wealth, so that in retirement you can get a good balance at the end of it. I've been following Dave Ramsey for many years and following his techniques, and I play the safe game and want to live as much of debt free as I possibly can. And so I applaud you guys for taking the risk. And on
episode 45, Squawk Ident Crew
files
stock buying retirement plan.
Yeah,
chapter 11.
So yeah,
Yeah.
just invite me to the boat when you get it, okay? Just so we
You
can have a
betcha,
couple
man.
beers, you know?
You betcha. Anytime. You're welcome anytime.
Oh shit, man. Well, you know, my weeks of since our last show of flying have been plentiful. I don't know why I'm still holding a decent line in my seniority. We'll see what happens after the big vacancy displacement bid comes out. We're all kind of all on pins and needles. Have you heard anything? Is it coming out? Supposedly in a couple weeks, they're going to announce the preliminary, and I'll find out if I'm still going to be an LA Airbus FO, or if I get displaced onto a different equipment or a different base. And this is just in an effort to kind of revamp the structure of the airline. We've seen these articles in the news and on the internet about how all these airlines are going to be restructuring and be smaller after this whole COVID pandemic starts to come back to normalcy in terms of the economy and air travel. And we're starting to see a little bit of that, but either way, no matter how good it gets, the airlines, all of them in the United States of America, they're going to be smaller. They're going to be more streamlined, a little tightening of the belt, you can say. And so we've talked about this before on shows together where there's going to be a big vacancy bid and displacement bid because they've parked a bunch of airplanes. They've closed, not bases, but those airplanes won't be flying out of those bases anymore. And then they're moving some airplanes to different bases like Philly. And Rob, help me out here. What's the other one they announced that they're going to add? I think
they're going to add a base to 787 base to. Oh, you put me on the spot.
Was it Philly? And
I think I think it's Philly, and then they're also going to add a 737 base to Charlotte.
Charlotte, yeah. So there's going to be a lot of this shuffling of the pilot group, and because it's based on the pilot's preferences in their displacement bid. So they have a bid in the computer and saying, okay, if I get pushed out of my base because my seniority can no longer hold that aircraft at that base, then what are my choices or my preferences? So if your displacement preferences are, well, if I can't hold, for me personally, if I can't hold an Airbus in Los Angeles, I'd rather go to a 737 in Los Angeles because I would rather not commute. I've done that for over a decade in my previous history with other airlines, and I just don't feel like I want to do that unless I have to. So I'd rather do that. If 787 long haul wide body opens up for FO, which with my seniority would be like FOB or FOC or whatever it is, where I'm basically a relief pilot going over to Asia or New Zealand or wherever they go, then I won't be doing landings. I'll be going to the Dallas training center every 90 days to get 3 landings in, because as a relief pilot, you are basically in a bunk for the duration, for most of the flight. And then when you're running breaks 4 hours in or whatever, you run breaks for the other pilots. And so they get their rest on these long haul flights that are going over the ocean. So who knows? I possibly might get displaced out of Los Angeles completely and put on an aircraft at a different base. And I have my preferences for that as well. So when this whole thing runs and is completed, then we'll know with the preliminary where we're going to go. But then the pilots have an opportunity to go, well, okay, I was awarded this over here at this base, say Dallas, but I can see that my seniority, I could actually have done this instead. So during the preliminary, you can kind of adjust things if there are people more junior to you with a different base that you might prefer more. So, and there's a lot of legalities and union issues with that and contract issues. So it gets really complicated. So I'm sure it'll be more than one run. It'll probably be 2 or 3 runs before everybody kind of gets settled into the groove of things. And then by then, I'm sure the company will change things around again. So this is actually going to affect a lot of pilots for a long time. So we'll see what happens. But for now, I'm flying basically my regular flying. I've been very fortunate. I'm not that senior, but I'll take it. There's enough people above me that are taking these voluntary leave of absences that helps out with my bidding process for my monthly bidding. And I've been flying close to 85, close to sometimes 90 hours a month, which is a little more than average. So this whole thing it's kind of tiring, to tell you the truth. Since our last show, I've done a 2-day with a Washington D.C. overnight. I've had a few days off, and I'm doing, as we mentioned before, 3 2-day trips back to back, meaning no days off in between. And I'm in the between right now, my second and third trip. And the trips have been fairly consistent. There are a lot of flying in a day, relatively short overnights. It doesn't really matter to me right now because most things are boarded up, shut down, hard to find food, nothing really to do on the overnight. It's not like I'm like, well, I was going to go for a run in the park. It's like, not really. But it's been a definite increase in how many passengers I am seeing on board the aircraft. We are, for the past 3 days now, every single flight that I was a part of, we were at capacity, meaning the maximum of 85% capacity, which is what Legacy Airlines is currently offering up. And we're full. And some people are upset about that. Others are totally okay with it. They're excited to see, the return of aviation come back. My flight sequences, I had a couple incidences this week. I don't know, Rob, did you have any passenger misconduct issues or anything weird happen?
None that I was aware of. People were, for the most part, compliant with all the new standards and safety and stuff like that. I mean, the social distancing thing is, they do their best, but when you're boarding and you're deplaning, they ask you to say 6 feet away or whatever, and you just end up crowding the person in front of you anyway. Yeah, especially when you go to get off the airplane, everybody's like, to get off this thing, so standing back to back. And but as far as the the face coverings and masks and stuff like that, everybody had one on getting on the airplane, and a lot of people when they were drinking or snacking, they pull it down, which is that's what you got to do.
Right.
And then the guys that were the no way kind of guys, I'm not doing this. As soon as we parked the airplane, they took it off, and they're walking off the plane without it. So
yeah.
But yeah, as far as the week went, and on a couple flights that I did, everybody was pretty much. It looks like people are happy to be going places. I didn't see too much people that were worried about being in a crowded airplane or a crowded airport.
Yeah.
I think most of the passengers looked like they were just happy to be going places, and the stores were open in the terminals, and the shops were I wouldn't say the shops, but the restaurants were open in the terminals, and
was it a good percentage there in Dallas that was open?
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, it was obviously when everything happened, everything was shut down. I mean, there was maybe one place open in the terminal that you can get food, and now you've got the fast food places are open. You're getting some of the restaurants, they're allowing people to sit down again, and with social distancing, they block off some tables and stuff so that you can separate. Coffee shops are opening up in the terminals, which is great, because I think we all miss that stuff. But with that being said, since our last broadcast, literally I've been to Dallas, Chicago, and Miami. So I really haven't been to too many airports, and obviously all 3 of those are Legacy Airline airports. So
hubs, yeah,
it'd be interesting to how other places are doing.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to the Dallas Fort Worth International Airport. DFW, I read this morning, has now become the world's busiest airport.
I saw that. That's interesting.
And that's, the world's busiest airport. So, that it's good news for us, for Legacy Airlines. And I'm really happy to hear that and read that this morning. I've had a couple issues And
Yeah, yeah.
I know this will probably entertain Roger because he probably remembers from his regional days having to deal with these kind of things. But so, we all know about what's going on with the unrest and the protest happening all over the world at this point. France, England, I mean, a lot of countries are joining in, and rightfully so. The George Floyd murder, which is really what it was, regardless of what your opinion is on the reaction to all of it, things need to change. And this is not a show where we discuss the political topics. We're here for about aviation. But in light of what has happened, I actually was flying the next day, and this was about 2 days after the event happened, and we started to see large protests, and we also started to see looting and rioting, and that's unfortunate. And I applaud those protesting. Even in my neighborhood here, we're pretty far removed from downtown LA, and yet even on these streets, families out with their children and kids, teaching them about our rights as American citizens, protesting with signs peacefully, honking horns as they drive by at these major intersections all over town. And that's wonderful to see. But that's also created issues. And I had an issue on the first day of this sequence here. And a passenger got on the flight. We were in the cockpit doing our pre-flight checks. I believe I was in the middle of doing a departure briefing, giving the captain the departure briefing, which what we normally do at the airline level is prior to every flight, it's required that we do a pre-departure briefing. And that includes potential threats between the two pilots to open up lines of communication to make sure our threat and error management model that we use at our particular airline is being satisfied. And then the pilot flying gives the brief. In this case, I was the one flying that leg out of Los Angeles to Charlotte, and I was in the middle of the brief, and the number 3 flight attendant, comes into the cockpit relatively quickly and says, "Number 24F, she's coming off the airplane. She's coming off the airplane. I'm not going to have her on my airplane." And we both stopped, and we both turned around, and the captain's kind of looking at her like, "What the heck is going on back there?" And she's like, "I will not be spoken to that way." And she will shove me, and that's she was physical against me. And I'm like, "Hold on, let me call a manager down immediately to resolve this, okay? Remove yourself from the situation. I don't want to end up on YouTube." And the captain turned to me, he looked at me like, "Amen, brother. Let's go talk about this." So, and he was very supportive, and he goes, "Well, come in here. So he, took charge of the situation. Meanwhile, I got on the radio and I called our operations and said, "Listen, we need a customer service representative down at the aircraft immediately for a passenger that's in 24F. Okay. Meanwhile, the number 1 flight attendant, who's the lead flight attendant, the purser, he sticks his head in the cockpit. He happened to be an Army veteran, I believe, and he was a young black man. And he says, "Can I go? I'm just going to go back there and find out what's going on." And the number 3 is like, "Oh, you don't need to talk to her again. I've already made my mind." Oh, okay. So he goes quietly back there and he goes to assess what's happening. Because at this point, we really don't know what's happening. She is so distraught. She's just kind of, hands up in the air. And so she's calming down. Now the gate agent that worked the flight has completed boarding, and she came onto the flight, and she was a petite lady, and she was shaking. Not shaking from fear, but shaking from just the stress level that she was going through. And so as everybody kind of was like in their little circle talking, I saw this woman who was probably in her late 40s, early 50s and shaking, and she's going, "I don't know. I know we're all done boarding." But so I kind of see this, and no one's really kind of paying attention to her. So I stand up and I ask her, "Can we go? Let's go on the jet bridge." So we go on the jet bridge. I'm like, what's going on? Can I help? And she says, "Well, I didn't know they were a group of 12. And if they would have come to me 30 minutes before the flight, I would have easily have put them together. But I didn't know. And it has nothing to do with race. I didn't know. And just because." And so come to find out, there was a group of 12 college age individuals who were on this flight, who were going there, who were protesting earlier in the day, who were really revved up. And they approached the gate at boarding time and said, well, we all need to sit together. And I know this airplane's empty. And when the lady goes, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Immediately, the race card got pulled out. And saying, you're just, denying us because, the color of our skin. And so she's getting nervous because she's like, no, I can't. It's too late. I can't move this around right now. And because of social distancing, I can't, So she got all worked up. Now these passengers came on the aircraft and they were all worked up. And when they got into the aisle to take their seat, my number 3 flight attendant was in the back and she got shoved by a passenger. And when she turned around, my flight attendant, who was an older lady, said, excuse me, and the passenger's like, get off me. What stop giving me a hard time. Why are you treating me like this? You're not treating anybody else like this. So,
oh, jeez.
Yeah, it got ugly. So here, now we're all caught up. And my number 1 flight attendant comes up and says, I handled the situation. They're going to be fine. I talked to them. They're going to behave. She apologized. If you would like her to apologize to you, to the number 3 flight attendant, she said she's willing to do that. She just doesn't want to get kicked off the flight. And she just all revved up and she apologizes. And the captain at this point is like, well, wait a minute. No, I mean, we've made a decision here to remove a passenger who's physically kind of shoving and pushing. And although it's not a big, huge deal at this point, it's still, it's made people uncomfortable. And we just,
there was an infraction for sure.
Right. So at that point, the flight attendant goes, you know what? She doesn't know me. She doesn't realize who I'm married to and who my children are, because if she did, she would feel stupid. And we didn't press on it. And we were just like, well, what do you want us to do? And she goes like, you know what? I just want to go home. I want to go to my husband and my kids. And I don't want to deal with any of this stuff. And so the captain's like, well, are you sure? Because, we'll back you up. And whatever, you're the one that's back there. You know best. And she's like, no, I just want to go home. So fine. So the whole thing kind of turned into this big dramatic moment with multiple people involved. And for what? Because we had some heated emotions, some racial
hypersensitivity
to that. And it's unfortunate because the entire country was going through this during those few days that we were in the air. And so it immediately sparked a conversation in the cockpit. If we handle this situation again on the next flight, what's the best course of action? How can we make sure this doesn't escalate? And we really need to focus on being friendly, being kind, being inclusive, and not have those unconscious biases that we sometimes have as humans, and that we've talked about here on the show in previous episodes on flight training and how these special programs around airlines around the country over the past 24 months have been focusing on inclusion. So it was actually an interesting thing that happened. There was a little bit debate between those of us both on the flight deck and in the cabin of that flight and the next flight, where we kind of continued talking about it, about how we should have handled it versus how it got handled. And I'm not giving 100% of the details because obviously I'm trying to protect everybody involved. But it's a little frustrating to have to be put in a situation and really put your best foot forward and try to maintain professionalism and not offend anyone, and still try to do your job and maintain security and on all the aspects of our job. But it was tough to handle that.
That's a good. Yeah, it sounds like you did well. You did it well. And it also goes to show everybody kind of going down a slightly different path of training. We've been through numerous classes on this. We've been through. Sorry, my dog's distracting me down here. We've been through numerous classes and on diversity, and we go through security class training. We do that every time. And until you're dealt with a situation, you never know how you're gonna handle it or how you're gonna react. And sometimes, you can you can do the same thing over and over and over again. And when the situation is actually presented to you in real life, no matter how much training you have, you may react in a different way, or you may not remember any of your training immediately until something, corrects your mindset down the path of what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you did a great job there.
Well, thank you. And I am a firm believer that it's important to talk about these things. It's part of the reason we have a show, to get the information out there, what it's like on the journey of a typical airline pilot or an aviator in today's marketplace. That's what we're talking about here, not just with the airlines as well, but also with general aviation, also with charter operations. I mean, we deal with these things, and a lot of times we deal with scenarios a little bit differently depending upon our operation and the phase of our operation. And it's good to talk about it, because when that actually happens to you, in the back of your mind, you remember that story that you heard or that event that happened to you years before, and he'll help you just make those decisions a little easier. So it's not about being better. It's about just having the decisions easier to make, And Roger, did you ever have incidences when you were flying for ExpressJet that had passengers maybe misbehaving a little bit?
I was fortunate enough that I never had anything that escalated very far at all. There were several times where we had minor, and they were all alcohol related, but minor issues, if you will.
Yeah.
Nothing remotely close to any of this. I think that the thing, Rob brought up the training aspect. You can't train for anything that's going on in today's world. Unfortunately, you've got a little bit of a powder keg, if you will, because of the virus and because of what that has done to the world. And I think that people they're raw, they're scared. I mean, I know that I am to a certain degree. Unfortunately, it's calmed down a little bit, but there's still a lot of fear out there, and people have lost jobs, they've lost paychecks, and then this horrible event happened also. Which is obviously indicative of what's been going on since probably basically our country's founding. But how just kind of trying to put yourselves in other people's shoes, giving everybody out there grace because of everything that has been going on. And like this situation that you just kind of said, in the end, after a little bit of time, we kind of just all were able to settle down and not escalate it into something that hopefully no one ever intended it to be. Because I think that a lot of times that's what it is that nobody really intends for these things to get out of control. Just it's a snowball effect that just rolls downhill and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that wasn't anybody's intention ever. And unfortunately, because of everything else that's been going on in the world, you have a little bit more volatility on everybody's part, whether it's the flight attendant, whether it's the passengers, whether it's the African-American community, whether it's the police community, because everybody has these things that are affecting them. And all of us because of the virus, and trying to just kind of remember that we're all humans, and hopefully if we can all just kind of relax and calm down and remember, with the hope that people aren't doing that with purpose and evil intent. Unfortunately, some people are, but I don't think that's mostly the case. And kudos to you guys for, as a group, being able to kind of diffuse the situation and get everybody to where they wanted to go.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, because it really is tough sometimes. You're trained and focused on performing a safe flight operation, and now you're dealing with, social and economic turmoil amongst the passengers, that now it affects you directly, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not really what I'm here for. I'm here to drive the airplane, get everybody from point A to point B safely. And now you're looking at your captain, who, okay, you can say that that's why they get paid the big bucks, because they're the final authority on the aircraft and they're in command, and they have to make these command decisions. And you would hope that they have enough experience to try to keep everybody calm and bring down the situation to where it's controllable and fixable and preventable. But like Rob was saying, until you're put in a situation unique to what's happening to you right then, right there, no matter how much training you've had, no matter how much you can talk about it in the past, until it happens to you, you have no idea how you're going to react. So
Yeah, and I was also thinking just now, brainstorming. If you let's run. I mean, there's obviously a bazillion scenarios that this could have run down. How this could have played out. But for our listeners that are looking to get into the industry, or they're in the industry and they're just learning about things, and like like we all are, we've been here 15 plus or more years, and we're always learning.
yeah,
But let's put ourselves, let's take this scenario and put it in an airplane in flight. Let's say we didn't diffuse the situation, or we didn't handle it properly at the gate. We decide to take them flying, and there's an issue in flight. That can turn into something completely out of control.
yeah,
And let's even spin that into something even crazier. Let's do the trifecta. Let's have an emergency situation
exactly.
combined with this stuff going on in the back.
Yeah.
We're trained to just aviate, navigate, and communicate and land the airplane. And we will most likely end up doing that. But to have that going on in the back of the airplane, and you're trying to get the airplane on the ground safely, it can turn into a big can of worms on you.
Yeah.
So.
And that's just
Yeah.
that's not something you need to be thinking about or have had your mind on when you're
Exactly.
dealing with something. So you got to compartmentalize and prioritize, and that's part
Certainly
of the training.
adds to the stress level, and that's the. I think we remember learning it back in the day. The "I'm safe" acronym.
That's right. Yeah.
So that adds to stress. There's a lot of factors that you kind of have to manage, and if you can manage your stress level, that'll help you be a safer pilot. Well, when you have this going on in the back, you're always going to be thinking about that when you're flying, so that can add to your stress level. So anyway.
Yeah. And that wasn't the only incident that happened to me. As a matter of fact, the very next day, on day 2 of my string of 6 days of flying in a row, I had an incident where same captain, I'm flying, great guy, great conversationalist, and we talked about what's going on with the country, and we really had some good conversations on the flight deck. And we're doing a flight where we were doing Phoenix to Sacramento. It was a turn, and then we were flying back to Phoenix. And so we land in Sacramento. Everyone gets off the plane. The captain and I are sitting in the cockpit, and he goes, "Hey, you know what? In the middle of this turn, I'm gonna use the lav, and I'm gonna go and grab a soda from the back. You want me to get you anything while I'm back there in the first class galley?" I said, No, I'm good, thank you. So I can hear him kind of opening compartments in the first class galley, and I hear him telling the number 1 flight attendant, "Hey, you mind? I'm going to grab a soda." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, help yourself, Captain. You know where everything's at." So he's grabbing his things, and well, they started boarding because it's a turn. So as soon as everybody came off, the cabin cleaning came in, they cleaned everything, wiped everything down, emptied the trash, restocked what they could, and almost within 15 minutes, they were boarding. And the captain was just finishing grabbing his cup of ice, and the passenger that was seating in 2B comes on the plane. It's an older lady. She gives him a look like, she goes to sit down. She pulls out her phone and immediately starts to take his picture. And the number 1 flight attendant sees this, and before she could snap out a photo, he kind of moves his body in front of her and says, "What are you doing, ma'am? You cannot take our photo. We are federal employees, and we do not give you permission to take our photo." It's not necessarily true, but okay. He did not give her permission to take our photo. So the captain was oblivious because he was like, "Oh yeah, thanks, guy, great guy." He gets in the cockpit, he sits down. And a moment later, the number 1 flight attendant comes down here, "Get a manager down here now." He goes, "What? Okay." So in his haste, he puts down his soda and he immediately leaves the cockpit and runs up the jet bridge to get the manager, who was up there with their walkie-talkie and her clipboard and everything, to make sure that we were out on time and everything was going well. And I look over and his mask is still sitting there on the on the handle. I'm thinking, oh shit, because he's,
Exactly what I was thinking.
Right? So he comes back down, he sits back down, and he's like, well, okay, hopefully that will be taken care of. Let's just, let me give you my brief, because it was his leg, and he's giving me the pre-flight departure briefing. So in the middle of his briefing, he's like, yeah, we're going to take you here, and, this is going to be our takeoff. Wait now. And the manager comes in, and she's like, Captain, I need to talk to you. He's like, what's going on? What's going on back there? And he goes, well, the passenger in 2B is very upset because you weren't wearing your mask when you were in the galley getting soda, touching things without gloves on. And she's very upset. And I assured her that, as the captain and stuff, but we were going to apologize for her seeing that. And he's like, wait a minute. It's like, wearing the mask is something that's recommended if I can't keep 6 feet from people. We've talked about this on the show before. It makes sense. If you're within 6 feet of me, then yes, for your protection, I will gladly wear the mask, and because that's what we're saying to do right now. And our company is backing that up, saying, well, whenever you're, in the public eye, try to wear the mask as much as you can. If you can't, maintain 6 feet from people. And if you can, then it's your option. But, we encourage you, I believe, or the verbiage is, we encourage you to wear the mask.
Yep.
And so he was like, what? We weren't even boarding. He's like, whatever, so he now he's upset. And now the manager for that station was explaining how, well, in our memos it says you're supposed to wear your mask during your flight duty period and all that. And he's like, I'm not even going to bother. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. She was taking your picture? So I'm like, you're going to end up on Twitter. And he's like, oh shit. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, I do not want to end up, not in that context. I do not want to end up on social media.
See, he should have just immediately said, but it does say while you're drinking or eating, you don't have to wear your mask.
Yeah. Well, I get it, and I didn't ask if her name was Karen. It probably was. I'm just saying, I didn't ask if her name was Karen, but she was bent. She was bent, man. The whole flight. And then after we got up to past 10,000 feet, we're reaching cruise altitude, and the flight attendant calls up and says, ding, yeah, what's up? And he's like, hey man, I just want to say, I jumped in front of that bullet for you. And the captain's like, what the hell happened? So we got the whole story, and he's like, oh, damn it. He's like, God, and so we had a conversation. And I said, look, right now, with everything that's going on, I don't know if you've noticed, but if I'm in the cockpit and you and I are flying together, obviously for safety reasons and, quick donning oxygen masks and the ability to communicate with ATC, the ability to communicate with you and not go, what? Huh? What? We obviously don't wear the mask, and obviously we're subject to temperature checks, and, we have to sign fit for duty prior to every flight. And so we're doing everything we can to stay safe. And I think in that professional environment, that's all you can do. But when it comes to the public, if I'm at the airport and I'm not eating or drinking a cup of coffee and I'm just walking, or I'm on the jet bridge, or I'm in the terminal, even if no one's around me, I'm still going to wear the damn mask, because I want to do my part, and I don't want to be the subject of ridicule from a Karen out there. And for those of you named Karen that are not actually like that, I apologize. But I don't want to have to deal with that shit. I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to end up on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I just don't want to end up there. Oh, look at this pilot from Legacy Airlines. He's not wearing his mask and endangering all of us. Because that's...
You only want to end up on the Squawk Ident podcast. That's all the only place you want to be at.
Right.
Got it.
Which reminds me, for all of those that are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, make sure you follow at Squawk Ident Podcast or Aviator Tony and Squawk Ident. And for those of you on the YouTubes, yes, we're on there too. And I do post clips whenever I can, because it does take time to produce these videos, but I do post clips from the show so you can get a little bit of, to see what we look like and a little bit of that dialogue. And they're there just to kind of tease the show so that you then go, hey, maybe I'll check out Squawk Ident. So, but check this out, leave us a review, let us know what's going on. But yeah, that is what happened. on my
That's crazy, man.
last couple trips.
That's crazy.
So
I couldn't imagine. You know, now that you talk about it, I guess because of all the time off I've had, I've probably missed out on some of those things happening, and I'm sure it's happening all across the country in every, you know, facet of every industry or any customer service faced industry going on. I feel bad because uh, we shouldn't have to deal with this, and man, my heart aches just hearing about it and talking about it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's just painful to me because I personally wasn't brought up, you know, uh, being racial or anything like that, and it just pains me just to hear about these things. So
Being
that sucks.
complicit is a crime, Rob.
Yeah, I know.
Being silent is a crime, Rob. You
Right,
cannot be
well.
silent anymore. You have to stand up. And I'm
Yep.
not I'm not trying to sound like I'm making fun or light of the situation. I'm absolutely not. But
Yeah.
this is what we've become. You know, here we are, we're aviators. We're at the tip of the spear
Yeah.
here trying to promote safety, professionalism. I mean, we're flying these $100 million planes. It's a lot
Yep.
of responsibility that we have upon
Yeah.
us. And we have, if you just put a $1 million life insurance policy on every passenger's, there's another 200 million per flight. So that's a lot of responsibility. Do you think that with all that responsibility, all that training that has been bestowed upon us every 9, 18, 12, 24 months, whatever, that this is the shit that we need to be dealing with every day for every leg? It really isn't. But
Yeah, when I step foot in the cockpit, you know, regardless of you know, sex, race, whatever, I give that particular individual, you know, my utmost respect
yeah, absolutely.
and courtesy. You know, ma'am, sir, captain, whatever. You know, even the flight attendants. I don't, you know, they're human beings. I talk to them exactly as I wish to be, you know, addressed and talked to, and you know, I do that to passengers and everything. And I just would wish that people would just pump the brakes, slow down, and just be human.
We
You know,
need to take care of each other, regardless
Absolutely.
of race, creed, sex, orientation, whatever. That really
Exactly, man.
doesn't matter because that doesn't make who you are. Your character, personality, how
exactly.
you treat others. I had a conversation with my captain just the other day, and Roger could probably chime in on this one because he's got 2 grade school children that he does a wonderful job as a parent, and I know he instills this in them every day, but this is something that we were talking about that I haven't heard in years, and that's the golden rule. I was shoved the golden rule every day of my life until I was probably 18 years old. The golden rule: treat others the way you like to be treated. I haven't heard that phrase in 20 years. What happened?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for it. That's one of those sad things about today's within the past 2 weeks, especially. But even before that, in today's society, and you're right. I mean, with my 2 young kids, respect and responsibility. Those, I mean, I hammer them maybe even more than maybe I should because kind of like you were just saying, it seems like there's a complete, not a complete, but a large lack of those 2 things: personal responsibility and respect for your fellow man. You know,
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's going to be bad
Totally
apples
agree.
in every walk of life, in every profession. There will be the bad apples, and they are the ones that are going to, you know, give a bad name for the rest of us. Obviously, this situation, we have an example of a police officer. Police officers are no exception. We have bad people that are bad people as police officers, and you know, I don't want to pass judgment too quick, but it sure would appear as if we've found one. Where's the respect for your fellow man? Where's taking personal responsibility? I mean, how in your right mind do you do something like this on video cameras with a bunch of people standing around? And I don't have the answers to that, but I do. As a parent, that's kind of what I feel is like my number one job is trying to instill those 2 things. respect for everybody else. Just what you were talking about, Tony. It doesn't matter who you are, what color your skin is, what religion you may practice, what political party you might associate with more. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves our respect. And just like, they should respect you. But regardless of how they treat you, we still need to treat everybody with that respect. And then you need to take personal responsibility for your own actions. And each one of us on the screws up. Take responsibility for that. Everybody screws up.
Yeah, sure.
But you have to be able to take personal responsibility for that stuff, and you have to show respect for your fellow man, because otherwise, what are we?
Yeah.
I mean, we end up in a mess of society, which is kind of what's come to a head. And obviously, you could definitely argue there's kind of a perfect storm of scenarios that are happening to create that. But again, like you said, Tony, we shouldn't be having to think about this when we're going about our daily lives. But it's just one of those things that there's definitely been a lack of those two principles and the golden rule.
Yeah.
Simply treating others how you would like to be treated, because you cannot tell me that what I see on the news, and I just like, I think Rob had mentioned it before about how he had turned off the news. I do the same thing, but you cannot tell me that what we see on the news is people treating other people how they would want to be treated. It's not. It's ridiculous.
And
Here we are
on an aviation podcast where we talk about the journey of today's aviators in today's marketplace, and this is what we end up talking about, because this is affecting us.
Yeah.
It's affecting us, and it's important to note. And Roger, you did mention this, that there are bad apples, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about a profession. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a group, whether that's ethnic, whether that's political. It doesn't matter. You're always going to have individuals that are kind of what we like to label as the bad seed or the black sheep of the group, where they're behaving badly. Their thoughts are negative or negatively affect others. You're always going to have that. And to say that one cop equals all cops is wrong. To say that one person or suspect equals all people of that type is wrong. And I know that I've come across those situations over the past 2 decades where a flight attendant will look at me and occasionally, before they even get a chance to know who I am or to even have a conversation with me, they've already made a judgment upon me because I'm a pilot, and therefore I must be a jerk or an asshole or whatever. And unfortunately, we all kind of have these biases, and we have to deal with them. And in a professional environment, such as an aviation career, you learn to kind of recognize and try to stay away from them. And you're always going to have that pilot, that captain, that first officer, that flight attendant, that gate agent, that ramper. That's going to they were having a bad day. They're going to treat you like crap. And just remember that just because they treated you like crap doesn't open the door for you to return that, unless there's something bigger going on that you can't control. The biggest test to a person's character is to be able to maintain their decorum in a situation in which they might even be baited into a confrontation. So, unfortunately, this is what we were talking about in the past couple trips. But there is good news in all of what's going on, and that is, and we kind of hinted on this earlier.
We need good news, man.
And we'll get to that right after the break. I have gone to Charlotte now for 4 days in a row. And the first few days, it was nowhere near as busy as normal, but like 2 or 3 eateries were open in their food court. And during an hour and a half sit, I have enough time to go and grab a meal or a salad or something. And then yesterday, I noticed that there were more people there. More eateries were open. There were lines to get food and coffee. And we're talking not just like 4 or 5 people in line. We're talking like 20, 25, 30 people waiting in line, doing their best to practice social distancing. And today, yesterday, I had Carolina
barbecue at Charlotte Douglas. They reopened. I got
Wow.
some barbecue. I had some a really good meal there. And today, I was like, the lines are too long over there. I'm going to go over to the taqueria place. Got myself a little chicken bowl, hung out. There wasn't a place to sit. Every table was full. I was lucky. I got in line. There was like 5 people in front of me, and it was the shortest line of all of them. That's why I picked it. And I grabbed myself had time to sit down and eat. And
was that today?
That was today. And when
I
I
was
looked
going to
up,
say, probably was because Chick-fil-A is probably closed. So
they were closed today. Yeah. So the lines were a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But then I looked up and I counted. There were 38 people in line waiting to order. And it was just a rush.
Wow.
It was during one of the blocks, and I looked around. The Starbucks line was long. They were taking orders with a clipboard so that while you're waiting in line, they're already working on your drink like they do over at In-N-Out Burger or one of these Chick-fil-A's over here with the drive-thru. They take your order with their tablet so that by the time you get up there and pay, it's already ready to go. They're doing that at the airport. Now,
that's good.
Mind you, not all the eating establishments over at Charlotte were open. And in Los Angeles, it's the same. Not all of them are open. A lot of them are still shuttered. But with the lines that are there, it kind of feels like, why don't they just open up and make more money? The people are there. The flights are full. The waiting areas are full. The people are sitting down.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully in the next couple of days, more and more eateries and restaurant establishments at the airports open. More and more people start booking flights and get out there, because we're going to see the real test is in about 12 days from today, because all those protesters that were out there potentially exposing themselves to this COVID virus. If there's going to be another outbreak, this is it. It's going to happen in the next 7 to 12 days.
It's going to happen in Minneapolis. It's going to happen in all the cities.
Los Angeles, Chicago, everywhere they protested, Charlotte. So I'm curious to see. And so be vigilant out there. Wash your damn hands and don't touch your face mask and all the stuff that we've been talking about. But yeah, CNBC on June 4th published an article. I'm just going to talk a little bit about that today. American Airlines, one of our sister companies, and other carriers are adding summer flights as passengers slowly return. This is an article by Phil Lebeau. American Airlines says it plans to fly 55% of its domestic schedule in July, up dramatically from May, when the airline flew only 20% of its schedule from the year earlier. American is increasing flights at a more aggressive pace than its other competitors, United, which is ramping up its July schedule to only 25% of what they flew during the same month in 2019. The optimistic outlook sent American shares surging on Thursday. The carrier gained 41% to close at $16.72, the biggest one-day percentage jump since its merger with U.S. Airways in December of 2013. United gained 16% to $39.10, and Delta added nearly 14% to $32.38. Executives at the major airlines expect that demand below normal levels will force them to shrink. And that's kind of an inevitability that we were talking about earlier. American is cutting about 30% of its officer ranks, or about 20 positions, from retirements and open posts that will not be filled. Shuffling others, a spokesperson said Thursday. The airline is offering early retirements and buyouts to management and administrative employees, and last week said it would seek to reduce about 30% of those jobs, roughly 5,000 people. Airlines that took federal coronavirus aid are prohibited from laying off workers until October 1st. So we're going to start to see a shrinkage.
That's what she said.
Of the airlines, but we're probably not going to see these things happening until October 1st. What does that mean to the pilot group? I don't know. My fingers are crossed, gentlemen. My fingers are crossed. I don't know. Roger, I might be putting in my application to see if I can maybe. Do you want a co-pilot?
It's funny. I got back from this last trip just a couple days ago, and I had a family friend, and one of her friends, apparently her son she wasn't sure who he worked for. She couldn't decide whether it was Alaska or Hawaiian. And he was kind of, I guess he knew what I did and kind of was putting out feelers about, because he was afraid he was going to lose his job on October 1st. And it's kind of one of those scary things. You know, I haven't talked to him. I haven't called him yet because she sent me his contact information because he wanted to talk with somebody. And it's fun. I don't know what to tell people. And my big fear is that you could have 5,000-10,000 pilots all hitting the street on the exact same day. And I think that's kind of it's kind of a scary thing. You know, I just saw Delta earlier this week's looking at around 2,000 pilots for their furlough. And, you know, you carry that out across all the legacy airlines, all the major airlines, and it could potentially be 10,000. I do not think that it will, but it's definitely a scary thing when you think about it, because of that CARES Act that went through. It's going to be all those pilots at the exact same time. Yeah. It's definitely going to be a little bit of a scary time, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm hopeful that not just for us, but for other airlines as well and other pilot groups as well, that we can start to see this increase of domestic flying and maybe even open up these international routes. I think the hardball that's being played with the blocking of the Chinese international carriers to come into the United States until they allow us to go back into the Asian market is probably a good thing. It'll force that international market to reopen because people need to get.
I thought I read an article somewhere. I probably should find it and send it to you, but I think I heard that they're talking about allowing 2 flights a week to and from China to begin here shortly.
Oh, for an American carrier to do it?
I think it's for American carriers.
Which is great. And, you know, but at the same time, from an international perspective, where especially the legacy airlines, the big 3, get so much from that international travel, and yet it's going to be so slow to come back.
Yeah, it will be. But I also think we need to do it because I think that's kind of like the feeler. You know, the tester, and the what do they call it? In the first flight into a storm.
Oh, the probe.
The probe ship.
Send in the probe.
Yeah, give me your report. But real quick, I have they're talking about the layoffs at Legacy and stuff like that. The what did we say? 30%. I have my neighbor actually works at headquarters, and he is very concerned for his job. He's been with the company 18 and a half years. He's been a station manager at Omaha, at Columbus, LA. Yeah. So he's worked his way up the ladder, so to speak, to the position he's at now.
Oh, or Legacy, yeah.
And you know, he's really concerned because he doesn't know, and I'm sure everybody in that building doesn't know what their future holds. Yeah. You know, with 30 to 40%, that's a pretty significant cut in workforce.
Yeah, what do we say about 2,000 positions that they figured out, and that includes administrative staff too. So
and what he's telling me too is he's saying that that's what they told everybody, but it looks like it might even be more. So the deal that he's dealt with is really just a predicament for him because ultimately he's at peace with whatever is going to happen. And he told me his story. He's like, man, I've been with the company for 18 and a half years. And I got to tell you, every year there's always that threat that you're going to get laid off. And he said, now on the pilot side, the way things work, you know, it's a little differently because, you know, as the operation grows and everything like that and training, you know, you need pilots, you lose pilots, mandatory retirement. So over here in corporate, you know, if you're not performing, you know, you come up for a review, you know, you may not even expect it, but that could be your last review. And then they don't get recall rights. You know, there's no furlough for them. So when they are handed their, you know, papers, they're out the door and they're done.
Yeah. Management, even management pilots are not represented by the pilot unions because that's a conflict of interest. So management is management, and pilots are represented by unions. And if you become a management pilot or a pilot that becomes a manager, you no longer are part of the union. So yeah, your recall rights are out the window. Basically, your representation's gone.
Yeah, and so, I do believe. Scary. I mean, we always see it in some of the other social meds, like we call it. That people say that that Legacy Airlines is overmanaged. There's a manager for another manager that reports to a manager who's the supervisor, or he's the president, or the vice president or executive vice president.
We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS.
That's it. If you didn't get it, I'll go ahead and make sure I get that back to you. I'll make sure they send it to you.
I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that's
a shame. And tell your neighbor, our heart goes out to him, and we're crossing our fingers for him that he, has a secure job.
He's a good guy too, man. Yeah. He's such a good guy. He volunteers for all the nonprofits. He's a big supporter of like the snowball thing that they do, and how they do like the honor flights and everything. He's always doing that stuff, and he's a really, really good, solid guy, and he's one of those guys that you hate to see get put in a position like this, because he does way more, I know personally, than a lot of other people do. So there's gonna be some good people that might be on the street pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're hoping that this hardball move that had just came up with the president stopping, because I didn't even know that. I thought it was only cargo going back and forth. I had no idea that Asian carriers were allowed to bring people and take people back, and meanwhile we were not. And that to me just seems extremely unfair. And I have a clip here from CNBC that I'd like to play, and it indicates that the president has banned the Chinese air carriers from flying to the U.S. effective June 16th.
We want to get you some news regarding flights to China and vice versa. Our Phil LeBeau now has official word from DOT. Phil?
Carl, these are details, and this is the order from the DOT, essentially calling for a complete ban on commercial airline flights from Chinese airlines starting on June 16th. If this goes through, and there's no reason to believe that it won't, this will effectively cut off flights between the two countries. Remember, the U.S. carriers, they suspended their operations starting January 31st. They haven't had any flights going back and forth, but you've still had about 30 to 35 flights per week from China coming into the United States.
So 30 to 35 flights per week were still coming in. And,
I see, you got to kind of take this with a grain of salt too. Who's reporting this, and what information, where do they get that information? I do see Chinese carriers coming in with their cargo.
Is it? Are you for sure they're 100% cargo?
Yeah, we see Air China come in all the time in their 747, but it's the cargo company.
Yeah.
Cathay Pacific comes in with their 747 freighter.
Yeah. Right now, I've seen Air China, China Eastern, China Southern, and according to some of these reports, even one called Xiamen bringing in. Yeah. But even the cargo, I mean, I know we're doing cargo. Legacy's doing LA to Hong Kong cargo flights. It'd be interesting to know
if they know that if they may be passengers. Obviously, I am sitting in my little house in Texas with no access to. Remember, I'm the one that had the TV off the whole time.
Yeah.
But seriously, I look up and I see these planes landing because I live right on the approach path for DFW, and whenever I see those heavies coming in, the international ones are cargo planes. They're all cargos landing on 18 right.
Yeah. Chicago O'Hare this morning, we taxied past the international terminal, and those gates were full. There was not a single open gate, and they were all international heavies, 777s and whatnot. And yeah, it made me wonder. I wonder if they have.
Well, those wouldn't be cargo flights, would they?
Those wouldn't be.
At the terminal.
No,
those would be passenger. Those would have to be passengers.
Well, in LA, at the Tom Bradley International Terminal, There are 4 or 5 different Asian carriers. Air China Southern was parking there just this morning. So yeah,
They could be passenger flights then.
It could be, or it could just be that's where they're unloading and offloading their cargo bins, because it's not a cargo aircraft, it's a passenger aircraft. So they still need the equipment to unload their cargo.
777s load and unload cargo at the terminal
at the gate. Yeah. So it potentially could be, but that's a good question. And we'll look into that and hopefully have an answer for you on our next show where we talk about this. Well, and some more good news. I want to just move on and talk about Boeing. Boeing resumes 737 MAX production. This straight from Boeing.mediaroom.com, right off their own website. In Renton, Washington, on May 27th of 2020, Boeing has resumed production of the 737 MAX at the company's Renton factory. The 737 program began building airplanes at a low rate as it implements more than a dozen initiatives focused on enhancing workplace safety and product quality. We've been on a continuous journey to evolve our production system and make it even stronger, said Walt Odisho, Vice President and General Manager of the 737 program. These initiatives are the next step in creating an optimal build environment for the 737 MAX. During the temporary suspension of production that began in January, mechanics and engineers collaborated to refine the standardized work packages in each position of the factory. New knitting processes will also ensure that employees have everything they need at their fingerprints to build the airplane. So that's great news. Now, I have not heard a thing about if they fixed the MCAS system. I know they had software updates that they were talking about before the coronavirus took over every aspect of our lives in the news that we have on television. And I haven't heard a thing about recertification or approval for release. So this could be a quiet way that Boeing comes back to the market. And I'd be very interested to hear more about this here in the near future.
Yeah, me too. And obviously I fly the 737. With everything that's been going on in the industry and outside of the industry, that whole Max stuff has kind of been, drowned it out by the news. Yeah. So anything, and I know that before everything happened in March, they were really close to getting that thing really recertified. So I just hope that they're ready to go, because that's a great flying airplane, great flying airplane. I flew it a couple times, and hopefully that thing's ready to go, and the timing of it, is perfect when we need planes and we start ramping up our schedule. We can start getting those Maxes back online. That'd be awesome. It
still seems a little odd, because they were building planes for 10 months or 8 months or something after they got grounded. So there must be a whole backlog of them just sitting on the ground somewhere, and then to start building.
It seems a
little odd.
They're parked in the employee parking lot.
Yeah,
I'm sure that Boeing has a better idea about what they need to do now. But they must have 100 of them sitting on ramps, like you guys were just talking
It is incredible when you drive by the facility up there. Have you been to Seattle lately, Tony?
No, I haven't. Downtown? Portland was the last trip I took that was even close. So no, I haven't.
Yeah, it's been a couple months since I have, and when you drive by the facility, they're everywhere. Yeah. I mean, it looks like a new airplane sales lot. There's all different tail liveries and
who's going to be taking delivery of all these airplanes?
And a lot of those orders were canceled as well. So
there was a lot canceled.
Yeah,
but American, but a lot of I don't even know the whole business aspect of these things, but a lot of companies will accept the order, or place the order, and then they'll sell the order to other companies, and that's how they make money on them. But I bet you this is going to be one of those scenarios, because of everything that's happened, where you're going to get like buy one Max and get the second one free.
A twofer.
a BOGO on the 737 Max.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at Google Maps over here, And even Google Maps has been updated because, man, there's a lot of brand new airplanes that haven't been painted yet sitting there on the ramp. And I'm like, there's a lot of them. I'm not counting them, but there's a lot. This is crazy.
Yep.
So, yeah. Well, good for them. I really do hope Boeing's a wonderful manufacturer, and I hope they come back stronger than ever. So
we need them to survive because it's an American company, man. And they build good airliners, and their defense division is amazing.
Yeah.
Hopefully just with a little bit more wisdom this time. A little more wisdom, a little more foresight.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully, they've got their management, upper level straightened out so that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah. And hopefully they come back even stronger. I think that would be the best, that might be the best scenario that could have been.
The one good thing that's come out of all of this is that I haven't heard a single pilot get in my face and go, if it ain't Boeing, I'm not going.
We don't hear that too much anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because... Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it's because a lot of these guys have been forced to fly Airbuses too.
Yeah.
And now they're like, wow, that's a pretty nice airplane.
They fly an Airbus and they go, oh,
that was easy.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. There's an up button. There's a down button.
Yeah. My favorite, Larson's one of my favorite animators. I think he has a cartoon out there and it shows the Boeing cockpit. It's got like 100 million freaking clock dials and gauges. And then you see the Airbus cockpit and it's got a screen and it's got up, down.
And, well, hey, now that you're talking about it, did you guys watch the SpaceX launch? Were you guys amazed at the cockpit of that capsule?
Yeah.
All touch screens?
Have you seen the meme? There's like the first space capsule and then the space shuttle and then now the SpaceX and
it's amazing, the
like
transformation.
MD-80 versus a...
Exactly. I mean, these guys are walking out in these cool space suits, What was it? Doug and Bob, what was it? Dave and Bob.
Whatever.
Dave and
yeah,
Doug.
they're friends since their birth.
Calling them first names. And I'm like, this is so cool, man.
Yeah. Well, and, Elon's done a good job. I say, go Iron Man, go Iron Man. And hopefully this will continue in SpaceX. And, now the next step is going to the moon. I heard they're looking for pilots.
Yeah. Well, I might be available at October 1st.
I like stuff that flies. I can fly your ship and your rocket.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and talking about everything that's going on this journey in aviation. I do have some good news. Last weekend, I was actually home and the family and I decided we were going to go for a drive and have a picnic at the park and practice our social distancing. And we tried to see the Blue Angels and Thunderbird flyover that was happening in our area. Unfortunately, we were about 4 miles away from their path because at the last second, found out that they delayed their departure by about 20 minutes and they took a different flight path than was published on the information we had from the internet. So for whatever reason, they took a different path and we ended up at a park with a bunch of people and we were like, oh, there it goes over there in the distance. So on the way back, my wife goes, well, you got all your Squawk Ident promotional stuff in the trunk. Why don't we go buy some flight schools? And I was like, oh, awesome. Let's go. So we ended up going to a couple of the airports here in Southern California and walking into a couple flight schools and,
cool.
Walked in and I was renewed in my love of general aviation. It's been a long time since I've set foot on the tarmac of a small airport and watched people doing pre-flights on Cessnas and on Pipers and I got to speak with some amazing people, some great flight instructors here in the Southern California area, and heard some positive news about general aviation. As a matter of fact, one of the flight schools said they have a wait list because what's happening is since the college campuses in the area have been shut down, normally the aviation programs, they have like very limited once maybe twice a week would a student go up with an instructor because they were juggling all the other schoolwork issues. And now people are doubling down and they're flying 2-3 times, 4 times a week and, doubling up on their lessons. And so hopefully we'll see an increase in qualified aviators that are interested in pursuing this field in aviation. And over the course of the next few years, have plenty of pilots to choose from.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, great news. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed meeting some wonderful people. And we'll just
Anybody offer to take you up?
No, not yet. But I'm telling you, like, it's almost like getting bit by the bug again. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought, I go to work, I show up in my uniform, day in, day out, I kind of do the same thing, taking off at 189,000 pounds and wondering, maybe I should just go rent a Cessna for the day and putz around.
You'd probably find out that those Cessnas would be probably pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be.
Doing a
Down
forward
low.
slip, heck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 1,500 feet above the
turns around a
ground.
point, baby.
You may just scare yourself too.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, where's the autopilot on this thing?
That's for sure.
Or
You're
the
a
flight
craft.
director.
Wait.
Flight director?
What's that? Is
So,
that the guy that's in the tower?
Yeah, right.
But you were kind of making fun of me about the boat. You guys know what BOAT stands for?
No, what does BOAT stand for?
Break out another 1,000.
Heyo!
It's true, man.
Single-handedly, Rob's trying to keep the economy going here.
Absolutely,
We appreciate it.
That stimulus check I got from the government it's being put to good use.
Many times over.
Yeah.
Looking for it.
He took his stimulus check, his wife's stimulus check.
I didn't get
all
a
his
check though.
kids.
Did you get a check? I got a debit card.
I got
I
direct
just had
deposit.
a direct deposit.
Yeah.
Yours was, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine
And
was a
are we getting
debit
another
card.
one? Did I understand that correctly? That a new
I
thing was
think
gonna
I got
pass?
the other one.
It
I think I
sounds
got
like
the
they're
another one.
Probably going to do a second one, but that one hasn't been signed into
No.
signed into law or agreed on yet.
I didn't get very much, so I got like $270 or something.
You make too much money because you're looking for boats.
I bought a boat. Yeah, actually, I haven't bought it yet. We're still working on that. Haven't found the right one.
I'm really rich.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm just really stupid. That's what
Some people trying to hang on their job. Rob, he's just trying to find the right boat.
Let me give you
Absolutely,
some
man.
advice, Rob. If it floats, flies, or fornicates, I'm just saying.
Just rent it, right?
That was the PG version.
That is the PG version, yes.
Hey,
Rent, don't buy.
Yep.
Rent, don't buy.
Oh man.
I think that might have been some wisdom from
yeah,
an
but
old flight school owner.
Yeah, I believe that
The first
was
time I
one of
heard
the
that.
T's.
yeah, I think that was the T1.
Yeah.
I think I probably heard it from T2.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time I'd ever heard it, but there's actually kind of a lot of wisdom in that. In truth.
Freaking lootly, man. Absolutely. Just saying.
And he would say it without a smile too, so you didn't know if he was serious. You're like,
I just gotta tell you,
serious.
my very first
That was just
time
fact.
sitting in a jump seat, I was a brand new hire and coming home from Dallas for the weekend, and they just handed us our uniforms, and it's my first uniform at an airline, and I put that thing on, and even though it was itchy and wool, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, and I go and I list on the computer, and I show up to the gate, and they're like, well, it's a full flight, my dear. Are you okay sitting in the jump seat in the cockpit? And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. So I go up there.
This whole thing's all about.
And I was taught, early on, law of primacy, you get taught the right way first. And I was taught, you always walk into the cockpit, and we've talked about this before. Just look up the old jump seat episodes back in the early episodes where we talk about etiquette in the jump seat. So I walked in there, it was an MD-80. And I said, Captain, hello, how are you? My name is Tony. I'm a pilot for so-and-so and for Sandpiper. And I was just wondering if I could ride in your jump seat today. Oh, sure. Welcome. Come on in. Welcome aboard. Congratulations. New hire, huh? That's so great that we're hiring again. And so he goes, all right, well, you ever been up here before? I was like, no, sir. It's my first time in the jump seat of an MD-80. He said, oh, well, come on in. I'll show you how this is how you use this and the oxygen mask. And here's the escape route. And make sure you pull down these stirrups right here on your feet because otherwise your feet will be dangling. And so, and this was Dallas, Texas. So yeah, a little bit of that southern drawl when he was talking. And so we get up to altitude, and it's a nighttime flight. We get up to altitude, and immediately, as soon as we're cruising, he gives us passenger PA, and then he turns the cockpit light on. He turns around, and he looks at me, and he's like, oh, welcome. How you doing? He's like, so you're a new hire. I said, yes, sir. He's like, you married? Yes, sir. You got any kids? Yeah, I got a 6-month-old at home, sir. He's like, oh, never mind. Too late for you. I was like, wait a minute. Excuse me. I really would like to hear what you were going to say. Do you mind? He's like, well, I was going to tell you,
don't do those things.
Don't get married. Don't have kids. I was like, really? That sounds kind of, that's terrible. Why would you say that? He goes, find a woman you hate, buy her a house, and walk away. You're better off. I was like, oh my God, this is awful. What the hell are you talking about? And the FO turns around and goes, don't listen to him. I'm like, what? He goes, don't listen to him. He's going through his 3rd divorce. Don't listen to him. And he's like, that's right. My first divorce, I had to sell the boat. My second divorce, I had to sell my damn airplane. Now I got to get rid of my condo. And what's next? The freaking cabin in Tahoe? Damn it. I'm never going to get married again. And the FO looks at me and he goes, yeah, you will.
Oh man, that's a good story. I've got a very quick similar story to that. So I've been boat shopping, and the reason why I got into this whole thing is one of our fellow legacy pilots I was hired with. We've known each other for years. He was actually a tailwind flight instructor also. Long story short, single, divorced 3 times, just bought a boat. His boat is awesome. It's a very, very beautiful, big, very expensive boat. And he calls me up and he's like, hey man, what should I name this thing? And so he's running down the list, and I just said, dude, why don't you just call it your 4th wife? Because that's how much it costs. And I said, you're gonna use it for 2 or 3 summers like all the other ones, and then you're gonna sell it.
I'm gonna call Mark and talk to him about that. That's just ridiculous. Mark, learn your lesson.
Yep.
So you're gonna follow in his footsteps. I totally get it.
I am. Fortunately, my wife is on board with this, so this is that's if she's on board, then it's easy.
Yeah. Well, as long as you have her permission, then you're good to go.
Yeah, or else I will be divorced. So. I'll have to find one with sleeping quarters in it and a latrine.
Oh, jeez.
Or they call it a head. I think they call it a head on a boat.
I
have to get all those mariner terms down packed. So
that's right. Well, I got the complete guide to sailing. If you decide to buy a sailing boat, let me know. I'll ship it your way.
Yeah, no.
No, too complicated.
Not in a lake.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the show. Just want to say thank you to both Rob and Roger for taking the time to sit down with us and talk about what's going on in the industry. Also want to say thank you to the frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, the EMTs, the medical techs, the firefighters, law enforcement, grocery store employees, truck drivers, firefighters, Amazon workers, and of course, all the airline employees out there that show up every day to work to provide the essential services that we do. I finally feel that we are getting over the hump. I know I've said that before, but man, it was busy. Full flights. I'm loving it. And are you enjoying Squawk Ident? We really do hope so. Please visit our website at www.aviatortony.com. That's Alpha, Victor, the number 8, Romeo, Tango, Oscar, November, Yankee.com. There you can check out episode cover art, episode archives, photos from the flight line, which we just added a few that Rob so most generously sent my way to put up there, and the pilot shop. And cool Squawk Ident gear there is available. You can also leave comments and audio feedback. And now there's a new tab on the website, and it's called The Guest Book. As we move forward with the Squawk Ident podcast, each guest I will be requiring that they give me something to put up on the website, because we've had a lot of positive reviews about being able to see these wonderful photos from the journeys of our guests that we interview here on the show. So check it out, leave us some comments, and if you want to hear us talk about anything on a future show of Squawk Ident, don't hesitate to send us a message. You can also do that via direct messages from our social media accounts. We're available on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and now YouTube. So big thank you to all of you for your support and your feedback and comments. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast player and you like what you hear, please don't hesitate to subscribe, to like, and to give us a review so we know how we're doing. We do read them, and we appreciate all of you for taking the time to let us know what you think. Just recently received a review I'd like to share with you all. On Apple Podcasts, had Flying Woody write in, gave us a 5-star review. Hey, Flying Woody, thank you so much. That's awesome. He writes, as a pilot, I listen to many aviation-related podcasts. This one is becoming my favorite. Maybe because I'm in the same age range as the host, living through the same aspects of life, working full-time, raising kids, being a spouse. I find Aviator Tony and his buddies as being very relatable. Although I don't work in aviation yet, I really like the insight they give into their careers. They have lots of good stories and some pretty hilarious ones too. And being that the host lives in the Los Angeles area like I do, it's really cool to hear him talk about the places I see in my daily routine, such as no traffic during the pandemic, which I'll make a comment on here in just a moment. I have an SEL commercial certificate. Congratulations, Flying Woody. And he's preparing for his CFI check ride. So we wish you the very best. And please reach out to us and let us know how that's going. We'd love to hear about it. And he also indicates that he'll see here in the near future what it holds for aviation. And we hope that we can all ride out this pandemic. So yeah, Flying Woody, thank you for that feedback, that wonderful review. We do appreciate it. And make sure you do send in reviews. Traffic, Los Angeles. I bid early morning starts with afternoon finish. No red eyes for this guy, right? If I can hold it, why not? Normally, I wouldn't do that, because why would I want to trug through 2.5 hours of traffic, bumper to bumper, to get to the airport and then go fly for 6 or 7 hours? That's crazy. So I was okay with the fact that I was flying red eyes and things like that. But now with the lockdown and everything, I was like, well, yeah, I'll have a 6 a.m. start, no problem. Well, yesterday, or actually the day before, no, yesterday, I had a 6 a.m. start. And so I left the house at 4:30. Gives me an extra half hour for delays of any kind. I made my sign in by 5 minutes. There was traffic.
Wow.
We're starting to see AM traffic during the week in Southern California. So,
That's good.
I never in a million years would have thought that I would say, I'm glad to see the traffic's coming back.
I'll say it's reluctantly saying it's good.
Oh, man. And, I really do hope that, we ramp things up. We all follow the golden rule. We treat others the way we would like to be treated, not just in the cockpit or on the flight line, but in every aspect that we have in the world. I want to also say one final thank you to Rob D and Roger, Captain Roger, for being such wonderful co-hosts with me. You guys make this show just so much better every time that we get the chance to do this, and I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I love doing this with you guys and all the guests, and we do it for guys like I think his name is Woody. Thanks for listening. Good luck to you, man. You have a pretty good future ahead of us, ahead of you. Sorry, and I look forward to hopefully flying with you one day, in a cockpit of a big airplane. So good luck to you. But yeah, thanks for having us on, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Oh,
I appreciate it as well.
My pleasure, gentlemen.
It's great to be back.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, all of you listeners out there, for taking the time to listen to this grateful aviator. Keep the dirty side down, be safe, wash your hands, and take care of each other. Bye, y'all.
See y'all.